Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Telford Wrekin Planning Committee. This evening's meeting is held in public to ensure that all those involved or interested in the planning applications can see and hear how the decisions are made. It is important that the speaker are able to present their information without interruption and that council members of the committee are able to hear and consider the material presented. Only those people who have been notified are able to speak. I ask everyone else to remain quiet, not to interrupt the meeting and to allow the members to make their decisions. I remind everyone that council meetings can be photographed or recorded, and I ask all participants to recognise the importance of the planning process and please let everyone silence or turn off their mobile phones. And before we start the meeting, I have a couple of housekeeping things I've been asked to make. Car parking. I hope you've all registered your car in downstairs because you've only got 40 minutes otherwise. And the toilets are out that door and that way, and there are no fire alarms expected, so if the fire alarm goes off, the fire exit through the door, turn right and follow the stairs down. Okay? I'm not expecting any fire alarms. Okay. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Jane?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Ian Fletcher and Councillor Jane Greenway as substitute. We have apologies from Councillor Raj Mehta and Councillor Kuldip Sahota as substitute. And we have apologies from Councillor Jackie Luffridge and Councillor Steve Reynolds as substitute.
Thank you. And the rest of us are here, I will say yes. Declarations of interest. Graham?
6.1, I'm on the one to town council, but I've had no interference on how I do it. 6.1, new works.
Mr Chairman, I'd like to declare an interest TWC 2021-0737, but I haven't had, as Lolly and Overdale are a parish council and they were one of the consultees, I'm a member of the parish council, but I haven't had any discussion with them regarding this application.
Okay, thank you. Any other interest to declare? No? The minutes of the previous meeting, are they a true and correct record?
Yeah.
They're agreed? Thank you. Deferred withdrawn applications, none of those?
None, Chair.
Right, thank you. Site visits. Val?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to propose a number for the next committee meeting. You'll note the next committee meeting is on the 17th of November, and we're proposing to take TWC 2021-0356 and 0358. That relates to the Arga, and that is for the erection of 101 dwellings. I also propose TWC 2021-0722 and 0724, which is the Gower at St George's, and that's the conversion of residential community use and new builds. TWC 2021-0637, which is the former Builder's Yard at Barrack Lane, Lilleshall, for the erection of 3 dwellings. And TWC 2021-0795 and 0796, which relates to the land to the west of Station Road, Newport, for 301 dwellings, and then the 70-bed extra care facility.
Can you note that that's for the next meeting?
I think we're also trying to arrange transport as well.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to you.
So
on
we're
that,
all there
on the
together, okay?
Timings as well.
Thanks, Val. The plan application for determination, that's on Appendix B on page 7 and 8, and I intend to do as they are in the agenda. TWC 2021/0737, land west of New Works Lane, Telford. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to a site located to the west of Dawley Road and New Works Lane, south of the M54 in Little Wenlock. The site is around 40 hectares and is designated as part of the Wrekin Forest Strategic Landscape Area and is in close proximity to the Shropshire Hills Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, the AONB. The proposal relates to the erection of a solar farm and associated infrastructure. Also included in the application, it's proposed to enlarge the existing car park accessed off of New Works Lane and to provide a viewing picnic area and display boards, and there'll be creation of new habitats as well. Whilst the benefits of renewable energy are recognised, it's considered in this instance that the harm arising from the proposals is significant and the application is recommended for refusal. The officer's report includes 3 reasons for refusal. However, yesterday afternoon additional information was submitted to address reasons for refusal 2 and 3. This includes a flood risk assessment, a bat, barn owl and mammal survey, and a land and habitat enhancement plan, which is setting out the biodiversity net gains. This information needs to be assessed and verified. So, as I said, the application is recommended for refusal, and I understand that we had public speakers, so I'll pass back to you for now, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Can I ask Councillor Jackie Seymour, please, to come and make a 3-minute presentation?
Thank you. Although this application has been recommended for refusal, which is the outcome I wanted, it is important to reiterate the principal objections. First, let me say I am not opposed to solar energy. I have panels on my own roof and 2 other solar farms within my ward. However, they have to be appropriately situated. This one, set within the Wrekin strategic landscape area, against the background of the Wrekin, Arkle and AONB, could not be more inappropriate. The Wrekin and its associated landscape can be viewed from many areas around the borough, and even after 10 years of planting growth, the blight of these panels against this background will not be entirely hidden, especially during the winter months. I would also draw attention to the fact that the strategic landscape area principle was upheld during an appeal hearing in 2017 after a proposed development on land south of the Priory, which is also west of Dawley Road but not on such a sensitive site, was also refused by the planning inspector. Much has also been made by the applicant of proposed enhancements to the walking routes round the proposed development. I would point out that these rights of way existed before the open cast mining and have already been enhanced as part of that restoration plan. These routes are currently hugely used by walkers from all over the borough and elsewhere. But why would anyone want to come and walk, or for that matter picnic, in the vicinity of panels, 6-foot security fencing and humming generators? With regard to flood risks, this has not raised much comment from the planners, other than to note that the developers have not actually addressed the matter. For me, this is of particular concern. During the open cast mining, there was quite a major incident when water draining down the hill overflowed the collecting pool at the bottom of the hill adjacent to the Dawley Road, flooded over the road, poured down onto the M54, causing the motorway to be closed for a period of time. Steps were taken to mitigate this, and then the area was returned to normal agricultural land soaking up the rain. You might think this time that as the land itself will remain largely agricultural, this won't be an issue. However, 3 or 4 years back, one of the other solar farms within my ward, which was erected on essentially flat ground, nevertheless caused considerable damage to a neighbouring farm through flooding arising from the fact that during the erection of the panels, the ground became compacted while the frameworks were being driven in and prevented the rain from soaking away. If that can happen on a site which is flat, just imagine the outcome on this site with its considerable incline. I therefore request that you support the planning officer's decision to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Angela McClements, please, from the adjoining ward. got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Charles. Just give me time to take my mask off. Thank you. Right. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, Chair, and to formally raise my objections to the New Works solar farm planning application. I'm the ward councillor for Alston, and whilst the New Works solar farm application is not actually in my ward, it will have a massive impact on the lives of many Alston residents who use that area daily to walk, many with their dogs, through Steeraway leading to New Works. I had the pleasure of attending the big Steeraway walk in late August, walking up Steeraway, leading to paths around New Works, taking in these beautiful, amazing views full of woodland, flora and fauna. It is an area which many of my residents use for recreational purposes. The area is used daily by increasing numbers of families, walkers, runners, dog walkers, cyclists, children, horse riders, and numbers have increased during COVID restrictions, since COVID restrictions were implemented. We are so lucky to have a glorious green space on our doorstep, and more people are now enjoying the countryside, both for their health and mental well-being. The recently launched Telford 50 Walks website promotes walks around New Works with their beautiful views. Every part of this proposal is so out of keeping with the rural location of open fields, farming and woodland. National planning and policy framework guidelines are in place to ensure that the visual impact of large-scale solar farms is considered. The topography of the land and the size of the site means that the panels could not be sensitively screened and would not blend into the landscape. The application states that any planning mitigation would not be beneficial for at least 10 years. There are local wildlife sites, sites of specialist scientific interest and local nature reserves within 2 kilometres of the proposed site. Ancient woodland pre-16 AD can be found on the western boundary of the site. I could go on and on. You will have all read the reasons for refusals, which are comprehensive. The arguments are clear and relevant. I only have 3 minutes, but the recommendations for a refusal are clear. And under item 10, detailed recommendations are explicit. In particular, point 1, which says, and I quote, "The proposals would result in a detrimental change to the quality of the strategic landscape, failing to conserve and enhance the character of the landscape around the Shropshire Hills area of natural beauty. This would result in significant harm to the character of the area and thus impact on the enjoyment of the area by receptors using the local public rights of way." Those are residents from my ward. The recommendation from office tonight is for you to refuse this application, and I ask you to support that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Mrs. Joyce Lewis, please. Welcome, Joyce. You've got 3 minutes when you're ready to start.
Thank you. It's Jocelyn. Yeah, it is. It's okay. I don't mind. That's okay. Don't worry. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening and represent the 180 plus objections submitted for this application. This is not a farm. This is the commercial exploitation of the tranquil, protected Wrekin strategic landscape. 97 acres or 57 football pitches containing 80,000 3-metre high solar panels, shipping containers, CCTV and 2-metre high security fencing will have a devastating visual impact on the landscape. It will destroy the character of the area and will detract visitors. It will have significant impact on biodiversity, ecology, including RSPB red list birds and barn owls. NPPF guidelines exist to protect and enhance valued landscapes. Government guidelines on renewables state that the need does not override environmental protections, the concerns of local communities, or the protection of local amenity, particularly in designated areas and near to AONB. It states that meeting our energy goals should not be used to justify the wrong development in the wrong location. not if we ride roughshod over the views of local communities. Approving this would indeed ride roughshod over these guidelines and local community opinion. The UK Government Solar Strategy wishes to open up the market for solar on the UK's 250,000 hectares of south-facing commercial rooftops. Telford Wrekin covers 290 square kilometres. It has extensive commercial roof space that should be exploited and has substation capacity to do so. The borough's local plan pledges to protect the character of the rural area and the strategic landscapes. It states, green infrastructure is an important component of sustainable communities. It provides a range of functions, including climate change mitigation, recreation, biodiversity, and benefits for health and well-being. Policy NE7 exists to protect the appearance and intrinsic landscape quality and prevent development which would be inconsistent and detrimental to this. Policy ER1 only supports renewable energy development where there is no significant adverse effect on landscape, ecology, wildlife, or on areas of amenity value. Crucially, the borough plan affords the same protection to the entire strategic landscape, not just the Wrekin or the Arkle. Approving this application would be setting a dangerous precedent of creeping ruination of the landscape. Proposed planting would in no way mitigate the impact. As the council commented, it would be difficult to find a more sensitive site, and many similar applications are already being refused on these grounds. I sincerely hope that as custodians of this beautiful area, you will follow the local and national guidelines, refuse this application, and protect this unique area for future generations to enjoy. Thank you.
Mr. James Jenkinson, please. Welcome, James.
Thank you.
3 minutes when you're ready to start.
Right, okay. I'll start now, thank you. Solar farms are a benign development concept that make efficient use of the agricultural land resource by continuing to allow agriculture whilst also producing safe and reliable renewable energy. With the right landscape prescriptions, as promoted by this scheme, they also promote very high levels of biodiversity gain, and in this instance achieves a net habitat gain of 25% and a net hedgerow gain of 317%. This includes transforming existing species-poor grassland and species-poor hedgerows into species-rich grassland, wildflower meadows, and species-rich hedgerows, and significantly improving their habitat potential. The significant amount of scientific evidence on existing operational solar farms over the last decade, including research from the RSPB and Barnow Trust, confirms this gain in reality, and the ecology profession is highly conversant with it. The objections raised to this scheme in terms of impact on wildlife are inconsistent with the evidence and my own experiences. The nature of solar farms and their construction also means that they can be installed without breaching habitats regulations and without destroying habitat during construction and operation. The application site comprises 7 fields of about 30 hectares for the solar arrays and approximately 9 hectares of open land, the majority of which has been offered to the Telford and Wrekin Council as permissive space as part of a Section 106 agreement attached to a planning permission. This offer to Telford Council also includes an expanded public car park and new permissive rights-of-way between Shortwood and Dooley Road, consistent with Section 120 of the MPPF, and Natural England advised to promote public access to the countryside. The car park expansion, additional right-of-way link and open space has the support of the Public Access Forum and the British Horse Society, who have been consulted from the outset on the scheme. These custodians of public access have clearly stated that the new link will improve safety and accessibility for residents of Wellington, and setting the hedgerow back from Dooley Road will make the footpath here more pleasant to walk along. Along with your highways expert, they also support the expansion of the car parking area and the improvement and accessibility to the countryside that it will achieve for Telford residents and tourists to the area. Your landscape architect has agreed that the impacts of the solar farm will be extremely localised to the short lengths of footpath outside of the AUMB and only immediately next to and within the site. The site is extremely unique within the strategic landscape area in that the land has been previously disturbed and the landscape here has consequently changed and is not of the same quality and has much less sense of seclusion and remoteness than the rest of the SLA. The gravel public footpath track extending into Short Wood is also legitimately used by people on quad bikes, and at least 2 of the landowners within Short Wood next to the site have offered us support to the scheme. And the expanded car park will assist the Forest School in Short Wood, which has publicly supported the scheme and wished to work with us. The solar arrays are low open structures that can be quickly screened by landscape planting, and importantly will not significantly diminish a viewer's sense of openness, as the screen planting will be set in middle ground views and will not prevent views of the woodlands and further afield.
Can you wind up, please?
Yeah, this is clearly demonstrated in photo montage 2, which I would have liked to have been shown. I'll just do one more paragraph. Solar farms and their equipment are not noisy environments. They are predominantly tranquil with minimal human or other activity during operation. In isolated spots such as a battery location, there is occasionally a modest amount of noise that can be easily mitigated. The proposal has put biodiversity, wildlife and public access front and centre.
Okay, thank you. Karen, it's back to you.
Okay, so this site covers approximately 40 hectares and is a restored open cast coal mine. The site falls within the Wrekin Forest strategic landscape, which forms a setting to the adjacent Shropshire Hills AONB. At the southern end of the site, it's relatively flat. So this is sort of pictures of the northern part of the site. We're near the car park, and so you can see that the land is falling away towards the north. You can see Telford in the foreground there, right there. So this is looking across fields 6 and 7. Go on to the next one, please. So this is so we're coming out of the little car park of New Works Lane, and we've got a young copse there on the right hand side of the top picture. That copse is should be around about 6 years old, so you can see how well it's doing. And so that's fields, again the top part of the site, and then you can see there, you get a bit of a better view here as to how far the land falls across. Next one, please. So now we've moved further along the track. So this is a restricted byway, by the way, well used. You get a better view here of the fall from across the site. This is looking across fields 5 to 1. Next one, please. So now we're on the edge of Short Wood, so we're on the western side of the site. Again, you can see Telford just over there, down on the left-hand side, and looking back towards New Works Lane, which is where the hedgerow is running sort of like across the picture. Next one, please. So now we're sort of further back into the site, and we're looking right down across the site, so you can get a feel of the fall. It's approximately 20 metres fall from the top to the bottom. Next one, please. Where are we now? We're by Short Wood and looking back towards New Works Lane. The visitor car park is marked up and there, you can't actually see it very well, but it's there. And there's a permissive path which is part of the restoration. You can see running down the left hand side of the picture. That's shown in the application as being part of the proposals. That is already there. It's part of the restoration works. Next one, please. So this is just outside the site, looking into the southern end of the site, field 7 and a bit of field 6. Next one, please. So now we're down at the bottom of field 1, and this is near the entrance to the site. So there is an existing entrance gate there. It's proposed to block that up and move the entrance up a bit, take the hedgerow out and relocate it back again, into the site. Right, next one please. So we're outside of the site looking across to where the site is, to give you a sort of general feel of the landscape. Next one please. Right, so this is now the same views, but we've got the photo montage at the bottom showing you what the solar farm would look like in situ. So yeah, so you can see what it would be like. Next one please. Again, this is near the car park, so it shows the solar farm. And then the next one is this is supposed to be at year 10. Now, bearing in mind how old the copse is already at the top, I don't know whether we'll get to that standard of growth by year 10. And next one, please. Right, so, okay, so this is the site, and it shows the proposed layout, and you'll see up the top of the screen, there's some black blobs. They are the compound. Which will be a series of sort of like shipping container type things and a small DNO. And part of the restoration programme includes the, from the open cast coal mine, includes the long-term maintenance of various features within the landscape, and that includes the hedgerows. So it's the hedgerow that runs between 1 and 2, the one between 1 and 3, the one between 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, and the one between 4 and 5. And it also includes the long-term maintenance of the woodland edge, which runs along the side of Short Wood. I'll catch up with my presentation. So the proposals would require the installation of racks of solar panels, maximum height of around 3 metres. We talked about the other equipment. There's an extension to, so near to field 5, underneath the green blob next to field 5, there's an existing car park. It's only a small one. So it's proposed to enlarge that car park, and then next to that have a, it's called a viewing area on some plans, it's called a picnic area on others. So that's proposed to create that there. There's also, it's not actually shown on this plan, but between field 1 and 2, where the white areas are, it's proposed to create a wetland habitat there, and a permissive path is proposed round the side of the field, and then it's showing a new permissive path along the top of 1 and 2. There's actually already a bridleway there. And like I say, part of that permissive path is already there anyway, as part of the restoration works. The proposals would result in public benefits for the production of renewable energy, enough to power around 8,650 homes per year, and saving around 15,000 tonnes of CO2 per annum. Objections have been raised from technical consultees due to the lack of information in respect of flood risk and biodiversity. I'll come back onto that in a moment. Additional information has been submitted yesterday, and it will need to be assessed by the consultees on behalf of the council. So there is a potential that the second and third reasons for refusal could either fall away or need to be amended. But the first reason for refusal relates to the impacts on the character of the landscape. Section 85 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, the Crow Act, places a statutory duty on the decision maker, that's you and us, to have regard to the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the area of outstanding natural beauty, and this includes impacts on land within the setting of the AONB. And this is reinforced within paragraph 174 of the NPPF plus local policies. The strategic landscape only forms a very small part of the landscape within Telford and Wrekin Borough, and it is important in providing a setting to the AONB. A landscape and visual impact assessment was submitted with the application, and this has been independently assessed on behalf of the council. It is acknowledged that visual impacts of the proposal could be relatively limited, and this is the point that the agent picked up in their speech about the landscape. Our landscape assessment agrees with that conclusion. However, it's not about the visual impacts, it's about the impacts on the character of the area, and that's a completely different consideration. Those visual impacts will be apparent to users of public rights of way. But the proposals would impact on the experience and the perception of openness at the site and its visual relationship with the surrounding landscape. It would notably detract from the high scenic quality of the local area, the undeveloped settings of the nearby wooded hills and associated ancient woodlands, including parts of the AONB, the patchwork of irregular shaped fields and blocks of woodland, the landscape enjoyment experienced from tracks and footpaths, and the sense of royal character and tranquility. Whilst it is only affecting a relatively small part of the designated area, it is considered that the effects of the proposed development would result in detrimental change to the quality of the local landscape. So having regard to Section 85 of the Crow Act, it is considered that the proposals fail to conserve or enhance the natural beauty of the AONB. This proposal isn't about size, it's about location. And members will recall of recently approving a solar farm nearly 3 times the size of this one within a non-designated landscape, where the impacts outweighed the harm. In this instance, even taking into account the proposed mitigation measures and the potential benefits arising from the additional planting and the proposed biodiversity enhancements, it is considered that these do not outweigh the harm. As such, it is recommended that the application be refused. Now, as I've already said, additional information was submitted yesterday. So therefore, if members are minded to agree with the recommendation of refusal, it is requested that delegated authority be granted to the Development Management Service Delivery Manager to carry out consultations with the relevant technical consultees on that submitted information, and if confirmation is received that this information addresses what we're asking is for delegated authority to refuse the application based on the outcome of that consultation with the statutory consultees. So it might mean that 1 or 2 of the 2 reasons for refusal, 2 or 3, may fall away or may need to be amended if the refusal reasons haven't been addressed adequately. So that's the recommendation. But refusal reason would remain, 1 would remain.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So,
Hopefully that made sense.
eh?
Hopefully that bit made sense.
Well, as I understand it, paragraph 1 of the recommendations for refusal are the main reasons for doing it.
Refusal reason 1 is the main reason
Yeah,
why
yeah.
we're refusing
And the other
this.
2,
And
because they're wildlife, may need to be reassessed.
They're
Okay.
technical, yeah, they're
Are we clear on that?
technical
Peter?
Yeah, thank you. I'm extremely conflicted on this one, I'll be perfectly honest. Everything I've heard from all the speakers from both sides, what I've read, what I've seen, I'm not getting it, if I'm perfectly honest. And you've now told us, Karen, there are reasons why 2 of the refusals may go away. And on that basis, I don't feel we're in a position to make a decision on this, because if we recall the last meeting and the meeting before, we were told if you refuse, we'll lose that refusal, we'll pay a big fine or we'll pay charges, and we'll still get those houses. With this, if we refuse and those 2 reasons fall away, we could find ourselves in a similar position. So the question, well, it's 2 things really. One would be to Ian, how strong would you feel that a refusal would be with just the 1 reason for refusal, if that makes sense? The other thing is, if you can give us a précis of what these reports said on flood risk, particularly bats, barn owls and whatever, I do feel that a deferment makes more sense at this point until you can come back and say to us those 3 reasons for refusal are set in stone, they're real, they apply. Because what you've just shown us on there with photographs, I can't see the real harm, if I'm honest. And we are talking about an area that was covered in open coal mining as well, you know. I find it very confusing that which way we're going. So with more information and a solid refusal, I feel I could back what the officers are saying. But at the moment it feels very hit and miss because we don't know, and it's a shame that information came in and we weren't told about it as well. I think we should have been. So I'm totally conflicted, and I feel we should defer it rather than make a decision because we haven't got all the information. Thank you.
Refusal reason 1 is firm, it's set in stone, right, you know, we're very clear on that. Refusal reason 2 relates to biodiversity and the fact that insufficient information has been submitted. Like I say, additional information has now been submitted, but it needs to be verified. So it covers some additional surveys and the potential impacts. It's saying that there are no impacts on biodiversity and that there will be significant biodiversity net gains. Now, some of that information does need to be verified because some of the claims seem to relate to stuff that actually relates to the restoration works after the coal mining. The coal mining was only approved because it was only going to be short term, 41 months. And that was the main reason why it was approved, was because it was very short term and it was going to have a significant restoration programme afterwards, including new public rights of way and the car park to allow greater ease of public access. This isn't very short term, this is 40 years minimum. So it's a very different kettle of fish. Regarding the flood risk assessment, like I say, it needs to be independently verified, but it's saying it's flood zone 1, there are no flood risk impacts. I'm not a drainage expert, I can't confirm.
Flood risk is a big part of the objection. So
yeah.
We should really know what the outcome of that one is. I just say I'm very curious to why the parish of Little Wenlock didn't object.
I can't comment on that.
No, but I just feel we need you to resolve those 2 extra or 3 extra deals that have come in, and then we make a decision. I just feel we're not in full control of this because we don't know, and neither do you with respect either.
We do know that refusal reason 1 is set in stone,
and
that is the important one. That is the fundamental one. If the consultees then come back and say, actually, the flood risk assessment is absolutely fine, there are no flood risks, then the flood risk of refusal reason will go away. But if the consultees come back and say, no, it's still not right, or, you know, there are issues, then refusal reason 3 will stay, or it might need to be tweaked in its wording, which is why we're asking for delegated authority for us to carry out those consultations, and then to save it having to keep coming back. So these are technical issues, but refusal reason 1 is about the landscape, and that is
so
the
question
important.
to Ian then would be: is that enough on its own?
Sorry?
The question for Ian is: would refusal number 1 be enough on its own to have a successful refusal?
Yes, I believe it would. Yes.
Can I inform the committee that Elena is the committee legal advice tonight?
I'm not talking to you, Ian, sorry. I was going to.
You're sitting in to see what's happening.
The question's the same one though. Would refusal 1 be sufficient to have a successful refusal and not be taken to an appeal and lose?
Reason 1 is a strong reason for refusal based on the development plan and planning policy. The refusal won't be issued until the reasons 2 and 3 have been addressed and sorted out, and it won't be signed off by Val until they've been sorted out. So there will be no risk of costs because
I'm being a bit pedantic here, and I apologise for that. But will reason 1 on its own, if it is one on its own, be sufficient to have a successful refusal and appeal?
Yes. As the development service delivery manager, I wouldn't put a recommendation in front of you if I didn't think we could withstand an appeal.
Okay, I'm just, and we need to know this in our mind, but I still think,
So with the
personally,
information that came in, it came in very late on after the report's been run, and we can't, in terms of the information that was received yesterday, we can't physically process it in a day.
okay. Well,
The deadline for any information that's submitted is always Monday, 2 working days before the planning committee.
I'll shut up now, but I do think that is a cause for deferment, in my view.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, just in terms of from my point, I'm happy with the officer's recommendation in terms of.
Okay. Can I say, the public out there expect us to make a decision one way or the other tonight. It's been in the papers a long time, and a lot of discussions there, and it's been billed as meeting tonight, and the public expect us to make a decision one way or the other. And if it goes to appeal, who knows what the planning inspector will do?
Okay, but I sit on this committee to make.
You're welcome to your.
Yeah, exactly. Which, if that's for me, someone will catch him later. I just feel I want more information, and that's the way I feel, and that is, I mean, there might be another people. Everyone else on here will say, "Shut up, Peter. We're going to refuse it, or we're going to pass it." That's fine. I'm just having review. Thank you. I'll shut up now. I promise.
Kelly.
Thank you. Well, I don't think we should accept information submitted the day before anyway. So if they can't get it in on time, then I don't know why we should take it into consideration. But anyway, I'm more than happy to support the recommendation on the first one. This is an asset to our community, and these community and recreational spaces are vitally important, I think, for health and well-being of our residents. Through COVID, it's proved that these were a lifeline, and our community, children in our community and families deserve spaces like that. So for me, that's enough to say that I support the recommendation to refuse, irregardless of the other two. I'd feel strongly that we refuse it anyway, and the other two shouldn't be taken into consideration if they weren't submitted in time, in my view. So I'm happy to support that.
Caldip.
Thank you, Chair. Like my colleague on the left said, this is a tough one, because on one hand we have open green space which is well used by the community, as one of the councillor, I think Councillor McLemmon said, it's a well used green and so on. But on the other hand, I'm looking at a green energy, something that we are crying out, and we're trying to save the planet and try to reduce our carbon emission, and something that's always in the headlines these days. So it is a bit of a conundrum for me. But I read all the papers, and I listened to the officers. My question is the other way around from my colleagues on the left. If we overturn the recommendation to say yes to this application, where can the council appeal to say for this reason it should have been turned down? And secondly, just to clarify, I think Mr. Was it James Jenkins, he said that there was some kind of an offer for a car park or something for the Telford Wrekin as well. I think I read somewhere about it, but can you clarify that? What kind of offer is it, or anything else? Well, I have to clarify it, it was said in the meeting.
It was said, certainly it's not explicit in the planning application that is an offer of land to the local authority. There is, as I said, there's a proposal to extend the car park, there's a proposal to have a picnic and viewing area, and some of the areas around field 6 and 7 are supposed to be more accessible, so you can wander off the path into these extra bits of land. It's not explicit in the application that actually they're making that offer to the local authority, so no, that wasn't.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And if we say yes against the recommendation, can the council appeal?
if you're saying yes, then you have to give us very clear reasons as to
rejection,
why you're going
but if we
against
go the other way,
opposite.
sorry.
Can't appeal against yourself.
No,
No, we can't.
So you are the local planning authority. You're the one
So we
making that
can't.
decision. So if you make
Okay,
a decision
thanks
to
for
approve
clarifying.
it, that's your prerogative.
You're stuck with it, yes. Anybody else? Jane, and then Janice.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points. Was the photo montage that we saw, because obviously it's not in the papers, but we've seen one tonight. When I look at that plan, and I'm very familiar with the site, I walk it regularly, that doesn't really make sense because those panels look way off in the distance from those footpath areas, and to me that doesn't make sense because the height of these panels, when you're actually standing there, there's no one that could physically see over the top of them because they're 9'6" in height when erected. So you couldn't see that open view, and this is, I think, the point that people have been trying to make, that there are avenues and there will be avenues, and that is all you will see. You won't see the open landscape, and when you stand on the footpath to Shortwoods you can actually see the Shropshire Plain, and that's why the strategic landscape is so important. However, the council have, as proven here, they've demonstrated support for other solar sites. So it's not a case of not wanting solar sites, but it is about the strategic landscape that's important, and but it's important to make the point that the council don't just refuse these things or turn them down or want to refuse them, but yeah, it is purely that fact in this, and I've noted in the report from the applicant and some comments that it's a barren site. Well, it is, as you said, it was a short-term open cast site, but with the promise of it being reinstated, and that's the difference. So I think it's not barren, it's roamed by herds of deer, we hear skylarks, we see mammals, and it's been a haven for and I will say thousands, because I bet it runs into the thousands of residents, and a lot of the new residents in Lawley use it, and it's been a wonderful thing to be able to do close to the urban area, and that's the point, that it's beneficial for the people that live in the urban area that don't have the gardens, that can get into that green space quite quickly across new footpaths that have been erected out of the village, like the trundle. But I mean, I suppose a sobering thought is that if this were to go ahead, our grandchildren would be the only ones that would see that site reinstated, and that just puts the time limit on it. Well, for me of my age, I might add, and probably perhaps a number of us here, without being too rude about it, but that was that our children would never see that site reinstated, and that was the promise obviously that was made when it was the open cast site. But I think Telford Wrekin have that policy, and it's to protect the strategic landscape, and it should be taken into account. And that was the advice of Natural England. They did not object to this proposal, but they said very strongly that we should look to our own policies and the MPPF to determine it, and that is our determination to make. I would also pick up that the flooding is an issue as a local. They've been quite a number of times off the slip road on the M54, there have been a number, and obviously if compaction on the site takes place, there is a large land drain that goes between site 1 and 2, and it drains out to that. Now, I know there's been possible provision for wetland, but that, number 1, is quite an elevated site, so there would be quite a lot of runoff on there. And it also goes from site 2, because that's where there's a dry dip in the ground, and that fills with water regularly and drains. So that certainly is something that must be looked at. I'm glad at least that they've got an updated proposal on the flooding, because it's certainly going to be an issue, and it could be a concern to the M54.
I mean, obviously that needs to be looked at. That sort of information doesn't appear to be within the flood risk assessment that we've been sent. You know, I need to speak to my drainage colleagues about that. You know, this site is still part of a restoration management plan, and that runs to 2030. And I haven't been to the site. I do have some concerns as to whether actually the management plan is being acted out, and I need to speak to my enforcement colleagues, I think, and see whether the management plan is being acted on, and that the landscaping and everything that was promised as part of that restoration is there, or if it has died, it needs to be replaced. So, you know, that's something that we need to do, and it's certainly something we've become aware of, that needs to be dealt with on this site.
If I could just sort of continue, I would be, because the policies and our need to protect the strategic landscape and that open view to and from the Wrekin. For us residents of the urban area, we need these green spaces more than ever, and when they are gone, they'll be gone for a long time. So on this, purely based on our own policies, I would be objecting to the application.
Thank you. Janice?
Thank you. Several things I wanted to mention. One was cleaning of the panels. Sorry, couldn't think of the name for it for a minute. I do know somebody who lives by some panels, and there are issues with cleaning and with trees being by them and with leaves falling on the panels and things like that. There's not a lot of mentioning here about how they're going to be kept clean and things like that. I'll just mention a few things and respond when and if. The other thing is, knowing the area myself, it's quite a large area and there are a lot of deer there. I do know that, and I've seen quite big groups of deer in that area. And I would hate to see them locked out of the area, which I know they use quite frequently. I don't know if we've got any details of how many animals, how much wildlife, what wildlife, how many deer in the area. But I know personally there's quite a few, and I don't know if there's not a few badger sets around that area as well. Also, as I said, I know somebody who lives not too distant from an area like this, and we're talking about making it some areas picnic and viewing area. I know that there's a lot of vibration and humming from these panels. I don't know if that's the case with these, or if these that I'm referring to are a little bit older, I don't know. But I know that on being close to some of these panels in the past, there is like a humming sound, and you can feel the presence of them there. As for green energy, I'm all for green energy, 100%. But I know there's areas that we need to find a balance, and there's areas that we need to protect. And I think this is definitely one of those areas.
Cleaning of the panels, there would be maintenance of the site, and that would need to be done in accordance with best practice and legislation outside of the planning system. But there would be regular maintenance of the site, and that would probably include the cleaning of the panels, but that's not really a planning issue. So other than the amount of trips it generates, which is insignificant in terms of its impact on the highway. Deer, unfortunately, are not a protected species, so they wouldn't be included in the surveys. I know that they've looked at bats, barn owls, there's mentions of skylarks, what else was in there? Badgers are mentioned. Unfortunately, we're not supposed to publish anything about badgers because we're not supposed to let people know where they are. Humming and vibration, if there is that sort of sound, it's very low level and it's not enough to become a planning consideration. It's not high enough to be a planning consideration, so it doesn't cause a nuisance. It's not that sort of level like I don't know, a grain silo or something like that that's got a drying mechanism in it which is really loud. So it's not something that is, you know, it's not a reason for refusal anyway.
Okay. Graham, then Nigel.
I'm lucky enough to walk this area quite often, so I know what the wildlife's there, and it's a beautiful place. And I'm all for green energy, but why with all these new bills can't they put solar panels on these new roofs? Isn't it in planning policy? Or can it be a planning policy?
It's not a planning policy in our local plan at the moment. I mean, we support renewable energy, but there's different scales. I mean, there's obviously the domestic scale or commercial scale. I mean, farmers put them on their roofs and on their barns and things, but we do also need other generators to provide other parts of the network where, you know, we need some central solar farms as well. So it's, you know, we have approved them. You know, we approved a 130 hectare one not so long ago. So, you know, we do approve them.
Okay, Councillor Dugmore.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it seems odd, you know, sort of, we've only just, relatively recently finished the open cast mining, and there's still, what did you say, another 8-9 years to go for the restoration. So basically we haven't finished one application before we're looking at putting something else on there, and therefore, you know, sort of, land will go, you know, it seems a bit of a waste of time if we're going to, I mean, one of the reasons probably for passing the, as has been mentioned, for passing the open cast mining was the fact that the land was all going to be restored to how it was. So you know, sort of, I do think that should be taken into consideration. And as Councillor Greenaway points out, it's not just the appearance from outside looking into the Wrekin, it's also for the people that are actually on the Wrekin looking out. And the thing is that there's not going to be much, you know, you could be anywhere if you're just wandering through a pathway that has got dense vegetation on either side. I mean, the whole point a lot of people make particular reason to go and walk in that area is the views and to be able to see the Shropshire Plains, etc. Now, sort of just having a quick glance, a couple of points on the report. On 4.3, 4 and 5, it says there's a screening opinion. So I'd be quite interested to know what a screening opinion is. And also on 4.8, there's a scoping opinion. I'd quite like to know what a scoping opinion is. I do notice that in 4.1 that there was the application for a forest school was approved, and I don't think anybody would complain at all about, you know, sort of that type of development, because that is in keeping with the whole area. However, you know, sort of this application does not. Now, 8.17, we of course, you know, sort of, when I got the report, I was eagerly looking forward to seeing if it was included that there would be sheep grazing underneath these solar panels, because we get this every solar panel application we've had has said about sheep grazing under the panels. So anyway, I did a bit of research on this, and apparently it's called solar grazing. But it would appear that solar grazing only really takes place in very, very large commercial farms in North America, Canada, possibly Australia. There's very little goes on, if any, goes on in the UK. Part of the problem is that, of course, once you let the sheep out, you can't get the buggers back in again. So, you could be chasing around under the solar panels for ages. So really, you know, sort of, you know, a bit of a red herring, really. I am surprised, well, astonished, really, that an area that's managed to flood the M54 and the applicant hasn't even put a flood risk assessment in there, which seems, you know, sort of. But as I say, that as has been mentioned, that might be part of the new information. But obviously, you know, sort of quite serious concerns, because I mean, the motorway isn't exactly just right next to it. There is a bit of a gap there, so that's a hell of a lot of flooding from my point of view. I mean, the thing is that the Wrekin is the iconic natural landmark, not only of the borough but also of the whole county. And as has been mentioned, we're actually the trustees at the moment, and therefore, you know, we have a duty to protect you know, sort of this natural environment, as has been mentioned, for generations afterwards. Although, you know, you did call me old, so you know, sort of, you did infer how old I was. As you know, sort of. I mean, I think the point that one of the public speakers made is probably the best thing. I'm going to shut up in a minute, and that's, you know, it is quite right. This is the right type of application. We're all happy with solar farms, etc. I've got one in my ward, and there are two or three others in the borough, but it's just totally in the wrong location. And really, you know, sort of that's the first reason for refusal. Is a bit of a killer one, I'm afraid. You know, sort of, you know, you can't get away from that. So, thank you, Chair.
Nigel, Janice, you want to come back?
I just wanted to propose that we refuse planning permission on this occasion.
So it's moved that we accept the recommendations.
We need to amend.
Just a moment.
Sorry.
Just find out what.
Just a moment.
The environmental impact assessment regulations, an applicant can apply for a screening opinion. So that is a request to the local authority in, is this project likely to have significant environmental impacts, which are a different level of impact to what we're considering here. Is it going to have significant environmental impacts? And if it is, then they need to submit an environmental impact assessment with their planning application, but it's a completely different bar to planning refusals. And then the scoping is the exercise to work out what chapters need to be in that environmental impact assessment. We initially said yes, it would have significant environmental impacts. The applicant went to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State disagreed with us, so that's why there's no environmental impact assessment with this application. The Forest School is actually in Shortwood, just off of the track. There's sort of like a little red blob. It's near there somewhere. So yeah, so that's in there. I do actually know of an inspector approved a solar farm with a condition on specifying that they had to graze sheep on the solar farm. So it should be happening somewhere.
Well, the inspector can go and catch the damn thing.
The recommendation has been moved and seconded, but we need to take account of the new information that has come in and amend it slightly to allow the officers to refuse after they've assessed the new material that's come in.
So just for clarification, we're amending, you're granting delegated authority to myself to refuse the application, subject to carrying out the appropriate statutory consultation in relation to that information, and amend the reasons for refusal accordingly.
Okay. Jane? Okay.
Just voting.
All those in favour, please show.
Is that the recommendation, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
You convinced me.
Convince you. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay.
Chair, can I just point?
Delegate to the officers now to assess and refuse. Okay. TWC 2021/0858 and land adjacent to 3 Davenport Drive, Admerston, with the erection of 1 dwelling. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this application consists of a proposal for a single 2-storey dwelling with integral garage, associated parking and landscaping. The application site consists of an area of privately owned open space located towards the head of the cul-de-sac, which adjoins the Silkin Way. The site consists of land allocated as green network within the local plan. The application has been submitted with supporting information including a green network statement, a design and access statement, an ecology appraisal and a tree report. A landscaping layout has also been submitted with the application. Members will have an additional letter of representation which has been received raising concerns about vehicular access, loss of privacy and loss of green open space. These are matters previously raised and addressed in the officer report. The correspondence includes a photograph showing vehicles parked in the vicinity of the turning head. Following this letter, officers remain satisfied, as confirmed by the highways officer, that there is adequate space for a vehicular entrance to be formed in that location. As such, officer recommendation remains that delegated authority be granted to the Development Management Service Delivery Manager to grant Planning Commission subject to conditions and informatives. There are speakers on this tonight, Chair, so I'll hand back to you. Thank you.
Mr. Christopher Bray, please. You've got 3 minutes, Christopher, when you start.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I would like to address policies regarding this application. I would start with the following, which is Urban Design Core Strategy 2007 Policy CS15. Design of a development will assist in creating and sustaining safe places, strengthening local identity and projecting a positive local image. It will positively influence the appearance and use of the local environment. A new house in this location in no way influences the appearance and use of the local environment and will not create a positive local image. Green network. The proposed site is green network, as has been pointed out, and sits as a buffer between urban development and the Silkin Way, thus providing an important wildlife corridor. Policy NE6 clearly states that it seeks to protect and enhance the green network. It is noted from the case officer that this application does not meet in full the 6 functions of the green network local plan. In particular, loss of amenity, not protecting the ecological value of natural habitats, failing to maintain an existing corridor for wildlife to move through, separation between the existing urban area and the Silkin Way will be lost. The mitigation in the application for the above statement that I've just made regarding the green network is poor. The applicants are keen to enhance the green network with the provision of back boxes, bee bricks, a hedgehog highway and methods of renewable energy. I would suggest that they should be in place at this moment in time rather than in the future. I move to dismiss the validity of the ecological appraisal and green network statement in this application, and that they were carried out by a third party and not by the council, and therefore could be construed as being biased in their context. Also, the reports have not demonstrated the true picture of this strip of green network land as it exists at the moment. I would like to point out that green woodpecker and tawny owls use this area as a habitat. I ask this question: how does destruction of habitat and replacing it with a house and a car park enhance the green network? Impact on Davenport Drive. The open aspect at the end of Davenport Drive will be lost by this development, and it should be considered that in effect a car park will be created, and therefore does not comply with Telford Wrekin Local Plan Save Policy UD2 by integrating or respecting the appearance or enhancing the quality of the local environment. There is a negative effect on existing privacy enjoyed by 18 and 20 Davenport Drive with this application. I wish to counter the case officer's remarks in this report. Although he is centred on the house itself, the car parking area is extremely close to the Silkin Way. I therefore created a problem for noise and light, including nuisance from more vehicular traffic. These are serious issues for those who use the Silkin Way and existing residents. Policy BE1 is clear in this regard. A property will prejudice and undermine the existing area. The proposed colour of the brickwork does not integrate with existing properties in Devonport Drive. The rendering is dark. There is no clear benefit to the Telford Wrekin community from this application. It is questioned why is there a need for property on this strip of green network land. With property in context will not meet the local plan criteria on affordable housing. Affordable housing is a priority. The increase in vehicles during the build phase and thereafter will create increased danger to existing residents. As representative of the objectees, I ask that this application be full refused.
Thank you. Mr. Kevin Davies, please. Kevin, you've got 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. Since submitting our initial application for the self-build earlier this year, we have looked carefully at the comments, including the points that our ward councillor, Councillor Keenan, raised, and we decided to withdraw and focus efforts on addressing the feedback. We have now made changes and resubmitted the planning application, which addresses all the previous points, such as the design of the build aligns to the surrounding houses and encompasses those features to maintain the character, but also has embraced many sustainable features to fully support the climate emergency declared by the authority in 2019, as well as contributing to housing targets. We have also addressed the issues regarding the access to the site with car parking sufficient to 3 vehicles and a vehicle access drive width of 3.9 metres. Our proposal is to do this with a low carbon footprint and to fully contribute to the green agenda. We acknowledge these within our application, such as no use of fossil fuels, south-facing solar panels to the rear of the property, air source heat pumps, electric vehicle charging points, as well as enhancements to the green network. We are planting another hedge to significantly increase the existing wildlife corridor parallel to the existing hedgerow, enhancing the buffer to the Silken Way, as well as planting wildflower and native species borders to support invertebrates and other wildlife, providing bat boxes and bird boxes, bee bricks, hedgehog highway and hedgehog housing. Councillor Kiernan has made a site visit to discuss the revised proposal and was complimentary regarding the changes we have made and advised us that he was happy for this to be dealt with under delegated powers. We hope you'll share our vision and take into consideration the merits of this application, such as the sustainability and the ecological benefits to the green network. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple more points for members. The main considerations in this application are the impact of the development upon the green network. In doing so, officers have considered the comments raised by the applicant in addition to the relevant policy NE6, Green Network. The policy recognises that there may be harm caused to the green network by new development, in which case new development will need to demonstrate that the benefits of it outweigh any adverse impact upon the green network and its functions. The Council's Ecology Officer has confirmed that the area is mapped as green network only for biodiversity value, and in this instance they find that the existing value is low. The proposed dwelling provides mitigation both through additional landscaping, including new native hedgerow planting, and through the inclusion of biodiversity enhancements, including bat, bird and bee boxes. In addition, the plans propose the use of solar panels, aluminium windows, electric vehicle charging points and an air source heat pump. Overall, officers consider that these enhancements provide benefits that outweigh the limited harm to the green network in accordance with the relevant policy. In addition to that, officers are satisfied that the siting of the dwelling would not have any adverse impact on the Silken Way or its users. The proposed dwelling is well designed with adequate amenity space and parking provided. The size of the site is approximately 560 square metres or 0.5 of a hectare. The footprint of the house is 84 square metres. This equates to a density of 17.8 dwellings per hectare. The development would not cause any impact on existing dwellings by loss of light, privacy, and officer recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Out to the committee to discuss. Any discussion? Peter?
Very brief, this time. Yeah, I think this is a case where the officers have, as far as I'm concerned, from a planning perspective, have ticked all the boxes. It seems to, the objections have been explained to me anyway, and I feel it is something that I have been up there and had a look at it, and overall I think it's something that we can agree with, and so I would support.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in two minds on this one. I mean, I'd be interested to know, in the information that we've got with the photograph, there's talk of felling of 90 trees. So, is that where the site is, or what? I mean, I couldn't identify any where these trees were. Now, the thing is that it's a relatively new estate. These properties haven't been up that long, and if it was suitable location for a dwelling, well then surely this dwelling would be on that plot now anyway, because when the whole road was built, it would have been included in that. So therefore, why wasn't it included? There must have been a reason for it, and I would assume that it was to give the green buffer to the Silkin Way. Now the thing is that it's inevitable that the building of this property is going to damage the green network, and indeed it says that in the report. And I think we need to decide what does having a site designated as green network, what does it mean? Does it mean that if green network can be built on regardless, well then there's no point in giving any site green network status, because the whole point, or my understanding of it, was that it wouldn't be built on. So what is the point of the green network if we're just going to build on it? Now, looking at the photograph, and I have been down there, and take the point that as far as the size of the plot goes, it's not an overdevelopment in as much as that there is room. However, the plot is rather an odd shape. And the thing is that as our plans, the plans in the report go, the front of the building line for the other houses on that row is being kept with this new development. But because of the shape of the site, that therefore means that this new house, if it goes ahead, is actually quite prominent and very, very close. On the photograph it's easier to see. It's going to be round about where that man is standing by the car, or there's a little white thing on the fence. So the thing is, I just don't understand. If this was a suitable site to be developed, it would have already been developed, and I'm not sure that it is. I think having a few hedgehog houses and bee houses is fine, but you've already got the hedgehogs are already living there. They're already on the highway, although I didn't know hedgehogs could drive, but anyway, and therefore the building of the house is going to destroy the existing habitat, natural habitat, and it's going to take several years for it to come back to where it was. So why are we destroying hedgehog houses to then have an artificial hedgehog house? Doesn't make sense. I think we do need to have a bit of consistency here, and if we're going to designate land as green network, well then it would only be in very, very exceptional circumstances that we should be building on there. And I think that it's going to be quite detrimental, have a detrimental impact on the Silkin Way. Thank you, Chair.
Andrew, do you want to come back on those points?
Yeah, Councillor Dugmore's quite right that we should only be building on the green network in exceptional circumstances, and that's what the policy says. As members know, vast swathes of the borough are designated as green network, and as you can appreciate, not every site was assessed from an ecological perspective at the time like it has been now. So what the first protocol is to assess why it was designated as green network. There's one of 6 values. It can be designated for 1 value, 2, 3 or all 6. In this case, the ecologist has confirmed that it was designated for ecological value. The independent ecology survey has demonstrated that it's low ecological value, and our professional ecologists have confirmed that they agree with that. So what the policy then allows, makes members and officers do is assess any harm to that designation against the benefits. Now, I fully take your point, Councillor Dugmore, about the destruction of habitats, but what an ecologist has showed is that value is very low, and what will be provided, I accept that it may take a couple of months or maybe a year or maybe more years you'll get betterment. So the ecological proposals, and they include the ecological credentials of the house, so there's wider benefits. They will outweigh what we consider to be the limited harm. So just to conclude, you're quite right that it should only be in exceptional circumstances, and we consider this case to be an exceptional circumstance.
Sorry, through you, Chair. So what you're saying is the ecologists are saying that artificial hedgehog houses and bee houses are better than the natural environment, because that doesn't make sense, and I don't think there's many ecologists would actually support that argument.
Well, different habitats have different values, obviously, and this is a privately owned piece of land which has got a relatively well-maintained lawn, really. So it's a bit like farmland that has very poor ecological value. It's the hedgerows and the trees that have the value. So the grass itself doesn't. That's why we've concluded it's got low ecological value. If anything, the value of the site is the hedgerows that surround it, and that's not being affected. In fact, it's being improved by the planting of a new native hedge.
And sorry, finally, Chair, just this 90 trees. Where are they?
Well, they weren't in place when we had the first application earlier in the year. The report does say that the landowner at the time had the right to remove them. We don't know when they were removed.
They were on there then.
I don't
know
about
the wooded
the number.
area, was it?
I don't know about the number, but what I would say is that the landowner at the time was within their rights to remove those trees. They weren't TPO'd. Obviously, it's not a conservation area, and there's no condition on the consent to say they had to be retained.
Yeah, it says historically.
Well, that's buggered the biodiversity in the habitat, hasn't it?
Are you finished, Nigel?
Yes.
Thank you. Janice, you've been waiting patiently.
I must say I've got to agree with what Nigel has said, and it's like it is very conflicting, one against the other. And why wasn't this sort of when this estate? I mean, I don't know how old this estate was, but I think it looks relatively new. But why wasn't this house sort of at that time? And I really don't like the word in 6.4 where it suggests that this is, however, a windfall of some sort. I don't see taking things away from wildlife and hedgehog runs and things like that a windfall of any sort in my book. And whether you mow the grass or not, if there's hedgehogs there, then they will still use that run. Yeah, I'm really struggling with this one myself because, like I said, originally these houses not been up there that long. Why wasn't this sort of at that time? Why wasn't this used and put as a proposal at that time when these houses were built?
Yeah.
Kelly?
Just in relation to this picture, just is that where that car is that a car parking space? And yes, and so is that also going to be the access point to the site as well?
Yeah, if I may, Councillor Middleton, through you, Chair. That car is parked on the adjoining properties drive, so number 20. So as you can see on the screen, top left. So it's sorry, it's in the little recessed red bit, if that makes sense. So if you imagine the site to be a square, there's a little dink, isn't there, in the top right hand corner? That's where that car is.
So is that just it's not a parking space in its own right?
Well, it's on the it's on the access drive to number 20, so it could be used as a.
Okay. So is that access to that land where that fence is? Is that where? So are they going to be driving through there to build?
Between that silver car and the garage.
So effectively where that red car is.
There.
That's where they're going to. That's the access to the site through people's parking.
No. So the parking area will be retained.
Yeah.
And then.
It all looks really close together, doesn't it, in this picture?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look like there's a lot in it, does it? You know what I mean?
So the I don't know if you can see it's like a red brick pavius in front of the garage.
Yeah.
That'll be retained. All bar, you can see a tiny little triangle on the screen. Sorry, being cut off.
Yeah.
So that would cut the very corner of that off.
Mm-hmm.
And then the parking area where that silver car is parked, that would be retained in its entirety. So our highways officer has assessed it, and they're content that the driveway is sufficient width to
get trucks through and stuff.
To get on.
I'm going to truck through there, would you?
Okay, it seems quite tight, doesn't it? You know, if you've got to get like building things through, but yeah, okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
Chair, I just want to clarify information on there. The author of this, Mrs. Joanne Simmer, seems to be. You got to be a ward member to call it in, because there seems to be some confusion here. He said, can the neighbouring ward member can call any application in as well? Because there seems to, I think we need the clarification for the author of this email.
I thought that.
Chair, do you want me to address that?
Well, I can address that one, because I was approached as chairman to whether we could allow adjacent ward members to call something in on behalf of a ward councillor who declined to call it in.
Well, it says on here that
I know what it says on there.
That he can't, Mrs.
All applications where the adjacent ward member wants to make representation to the committee, then that is up to the chair to see, and that's an old ruling which went back, because ward members 2 or 3 wards away were trying to call things in, and the full council decided that wasn't going to happen, shouldn't happen. The adjacent ward council can call things in if their residents are affected. On this occasion, I was asked whether it could be called in by Councillor Seymour. I looked at the ward boundaries. I looked at the properties which could be affected in Councillor Seymour's ward on this one, and I decided because Councillor Kiernan had decided not to call it in, it wouldn't be allowed for the ward councillor adjacent to call it in. It has to have an effect on the residents in the adjacent ward, and this one single dwelling certainly does not.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Chair.
Councillor Greenaway, yeah. I was going to call you Councillor Jade.
Yes, that'll be fine. I just wanted to come back on this this plan. We've got the block plan that you've got up there. I'm also feeling the same as Councillor Middleton on this, and I'm not that familiar with the site, I have to say, but that appears really tight, and I'm concerned about accessing this with deliveries through construction, but it's quite clear on this plan that you've got a very small proportion of that that's going to be taken up with a driveway into the site, and which proportion of 18 and 20 which is their land, and do they need to give permission for that access?
If I may, Chair.
I don't know, it's just not very clear.
No.
If that's there, if 20 and 18 have got shared driveways, and whether that is actually in their deeds or if there'd be an issue, I don't know.
Yeah, so the red line is entirely under the applicant's ownership. The footpath next to that is Telford and Wrekin Council Highways land. So yeah, so to get access, the occupant of the new property would only have to drive over or walk over highway land and then into the applicant's ownership. If I may, Councillor Greenway, I know this was Councillor Middleton's comment. In terms of the construction, I think our highways team is satisfied that the proposed access is wide enough to provide access to the property, which would include deliveries, by vans, etc. In terms of the construction, I think we also need to bear in mind that the applicant owns the adjoining piece of land. So as part of a condition, we put on a construction management plan, and if the applicant chose to allow use of their driveway for a construction vehicle, that would allow that. The likelihood is that a brick delivery or a cement mixer would only be there for a temporary period of time.
I think you've just answered my question in a way there. You've mentioned that they might need to use next door's land to deliver a lorry full of bricks, etc., for any construction. Moving forward, these properties could belong to somebody else, and the guy covered by the blue area might not allow this access. And I'm thinking of things like fire engines and things like that.
Yeah. So if I may, Chair, it was only an option that if the current owner decides to build it out, it's not an unusual situation where construction vehicles have to park on the highway. It happens quite a lot with, particularly with infill plots. Most single dwellings, you can't get a flatbed lorry with bricks or even a cement mixer on. So in highway safety terms, it's perfectly reasonable for a vehicle to park on the highway, unload its materials and then go. But from that needs to be borne in mind that's only a temporary period during the construction period. The highways team is satisfied that the appropriate access can be provided to the property in the long term. If I may, while I'm there, Chair, I will just come back to Councillor Jones's point about the definition of windfall. It's not in terms of like winning the lottery. It's not a lucky thing. We allocate housing so that we meet our housing numbers. As part of the borough's target, we don't allocate every piece of land or in the borough. Sorry, not every house that's delivered is allocated, and it's the ones that come forward that are unexpected, such as this one and other infill plots. They're defined as windfall plots. So it's a housing policy definition, not a subjective issue, in terms of it being a lucky occurrence.
Yes.
Can I just ask one more? And it's about the drainage. And it does mention there about surface water drainage and the soakaways. I wasn't sure what the elevations were like on the site in compared to the Silking Way, etc. And would there be an alternative method of surface water drainage if that wasn't if you weren't able to put that on the site? I don't know. It's all a bit.
Yeah, we have got a drainage plan. I don't know if it's on here. Yeah, so a detailed drainage plan's been conducted, and it shows the soakaway going from to the front of the property towards the Silken Way. So we would condition that if it wasn't possible to provide soakaways, then they would have to provide an alternative, and if they didn't, then if there wasn't a technical solution, it wouldn't be possible to comply with all the conditions, and the dwelling wouldn't be built.
But that would planning being agreed, or the discharge of conditions would have to be done before any...
The planning...
no, I don't mean agreed, but I mean actually able to take place until that drainage was done, because sometimes we've been in a situation where an application has been agreed and the drainage has been horrendous to sort out, and that's the issue that's obviously been identified as maybe an issue. What alternative is there? Presumably is there a Severn Trent mains?
Well,
possibly not.
There's an existing foul water sewer in the highway. It'd be quite unusual if there wasn't a surface water sewer in Davenport Drive as well. But in terms of, you're quite right, Councillor Green, it would be a pre-commencement condition. So if you were to grant consent, it would be subject to a condition saying prior to commencement of any development, details of the drainage need to be submitted and approved, and then only then, if it was cleared, they could start work.
Yeah, does it say that in there? Well,
we don't list the conditions in full, but that's how they're written.
Okay.
Is that area suitable for large vehicles to drive in? And I was wondering about children playing. Is there a risk, to children in that area playing? Kids play in the street, don't they? With wagons and things coming up and down. My parents kicked in with parent mode. But you look at that, and it looks like quite a nice place for children. They could be out. Is that wagon safe area to be driving up and down with stuff?
Yeah, it's an adopted highway, so the refuse vehicle would go down it together with any other. There's no weight restrictions. So I know these properties probably don't have oil tanks, but if they did, for example, an oil tanker could go down there, or even a furniture delivery wagon. So
it's not going to make the road flood more, damage it.
No. It's built to an adopted standard, so it can withstand the weight.
Okay. Anybody else? No. Somebody wants to move the recommendation or otherwise? Peter, you're moving the recommendation. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. All those against? The recommendation is lost.
We need the reasons for refusal.
Can we need the reasons for refusal now? I mean, we've had this before.
You need to vote.
Detrimental impact to the Silking Way.
Right. I'm informed by the legal people that I need to now ask you, because we voted it down on a majority, then we need to vote that we agree that, as a committee, that it's been voted down, that we refused.
That's not very democratic.
Oh, it's been done before. It's to make certain the committee is unanimous at the end of the day.
The other thought is in terms of if there's anything as well that you thought could be amended if you wanted us to go away and do that, because it's that option. So effectively you've taken a recommendation to approve, you've objected against that, effectively you voted to say no, we're not approving it, but now you need to give us clear instructions and vote for what you want to go forward and do.
So
propose that the
access.
The application is rejected.
Yeah. Can we agree as a committee that it's rejected then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is then the reasons for those?
Now, the reasons for objecting must be quite clear on planning terms.
So the green network, detrimental impact to the diversity of the Silking Way.
Access all the way, haven't it?
Restricted access.
Restricted.
And there is an impact on other housing in the area.
Impact on neighbouring properties.
Yeah, visual amenity for them.
Do you want any more?
Yeah.
So again, we're going to have to come to you in terms of being able to defend the application appeal. If the application goes to appeal, so it's making sure that you are satisfied as members that you think they're defendable reasons for refusal.
So
happy in terms of what the notes that you've got. So you've got the reasons. Can you just confirm the reasons for refusal, please, Andy? That you've got.
So loss of green network. I think we would need to add to that that the harm isn't outweighed by the benefits. Is the way we'd have to phrase it. And just to clarify, is the harm the biodiversity?
Detrimental impact, because don't forget you've also got it's not just the biodiversity there.
I think we need more information on that, wouldn't it, don't we?
Well, that's the question.
On the impact, we need more information to change our mind about that decision.
You've got the loss of the hedge and all the rest of it, haven't you? So
The hedges are staying, and there's new hedges being planted.
Detrimental impact to neighbouring properties.
In what regard? Can you be clear in terms of that?
You've got visual amenity. You've also got the problems with access and access to the property.
So, sorry, just to go back to the.
You've also got vehicles that are accessing the property are actually crossing over the footpath, and sort of. So there's been how the hell are they supposed to get across, or is it acceptable now for vehicles to drive over the pavements?
Yes, because as you can see from the pavement, where that pavement goes, every house across there has the same access arrangement in terms of going across the footpath. If you look at your block plan.
So a drop curb application would be proposed, so you wouldn't bump up over the curb.
The access is very, very tight. Very tight.
Access to emergency services, which would also be an issue if you wanted a fire engine there.
Yeah, you can get an ambulance.
The access to the emergency services on the highway, not each an individual house.
So that particular property would be an issue.
Also concerns over the drainage as well.
Drainage is a big one, isn't it?
Because if the drainage is not don't forget that all those trees that have been chopped down were actually part of the drainage in the area. So if you chop the trees down, if there's no proper drainage, well then all you're going to do is start to get flooding onto the Silkin Way.
Yeah. Drainage is a big one, I think.
Just going back to Councillor Jones's point about access for emergency vehicles, I think it's important to note that the fire safety officer hasn't they've commented on the application, they haven't objected on grounds.
You still have a hell of a job getting a removal van in there, I tell you.
Did they go out? Or did they see that picture?
I mean, there's nothing to stop the neighbours putting a fence up and making it very, very difficult to get any access into that property.
That would be the same with all the properties on the row.
But there's only a problem here because they're trying to squeeze a house into it which shouldn't have been there, which shouldn't be there, because it would have been put in there when the estate was built if it was a suitable location. So we need a bit of consistency if we're going to pass applications for estate roads like this. Well then, sort of what's changed now? Drainage is still an issue, the biodiversity is still an issue, the Silkin Way's still there. It's no different.
If you was going to build there, well, good garage there.
Well, the garage does look a bit like sort of tail end Charlie, doesn't it? Right.
I just wonder what's on that piece of land that runs the side of the Silkin Way.
I think, just one point. I think it's not a material consideration that the developer didn't build a property on there in the first instance.
No, but it's part of our consideration as to why it should be refused.
So just going back to the reasons stated, we've got loss of green network, and it was the negative impact on biodiversity not outweighed by the benefits. You mentioned the diversity of the Silken Way. In what respect do you mean diversity? Sorry.
Well, that's part of the biodiversity. The main impact potentially on the Silken Way is the drainage issues. All the trees.
Could I come in, Chair? There, what is on that land that would form that strip between number 20 and along the Silken Way? What is that land down there? Is it a similar? Is it, I don't know, wooded, open?
It's just grass.
Just grass. So it's green colour.
Okay, we've got the reasons.
The Silken Way.
It says the site does, however, form part of the visual separation between the built-up area with the Silken Way. I mean, it's identified that in the report.
Yeah. So
and by building on it, you're building right up to the Silken Way, so it doesn't act as that buffer.
I mean, as we mentioned on the solar farm, people go along the Silken Way and they don't want to see houses.
What they do. You see houses all along the Silken Way.
Not there.
I don't think people would notice, but there you go. No, it's been refused, so no more to say.
So can we just be very clear on those reasons for refusal then? So we've got one which is green network, the impact on the green network, and you don't feel that it's appropriate development, that continues to have harm on the green network. There's a second one in terms of, was it visual amenity and character of the area, or
detrimental impact on the neighbours.
On the neighbouring property, did you say? In terms of, was that overlooking distance separation or what? Sorry, I just want to be very clear, because these are your reasons for refusal.
Well, the way that the property is built is comes virtually to where the side of that car is.
Can I ask how that's any difference between number 3 and say the relationship between number 3 and number 14 by having a plot there between that one and number 18? I just want to be clear for my reasons for refusal so we can defend it at appeal.
No, I'll come and defend it if you want.
Do you want to read out then what you think the reasons for refusal should be? Because
he's been writing them down, so.
Yeah. Just in terms of the impact on neighbours, the officer report notes at 620 that there's a minimum of 21 metres between the properties, and that's seen as best practice. So it wouldn't be defendable to say that this property had an adverse impact on the privacy of those properties to the north. As Valerie said, the relationship is the same between 3 and 14.
You've got lots of open space, haven't you? You've got visual amenity from, presumably this photograph has been taken from number 20 or thereabouts.
So we go with visual amenity. It can't be open space because it isn't open space. It isn't publicly accessible land. It is somebody else's private garden amenity. It's curtilage.
Visual separation.
Visual separation to the Silken Way.
Okay.
I just.
It's only words.
No, it's not though. It's technical in terms of how we defend it. So
you're the expert.
But you're the ones that are refusing it.
Yeah,
so I just want to be very clear on what we're defending it on.
We give the reasons. You work out the technical words.
Well,
so are we removing the impact on properties based on the provision of 21 metres between the windows?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that leaves the loss of green network and the biodiversity harm not outweighed by the benefits, and the loss of the visual separation between the built development and the Silken Way. We need to address the access concerns, because bearing in mind that the council's technical experts on highways haven't objected to this scheme.
Because it can. Does it mean it necessarily should, just because is it like minimally possible, or is it doesn't look very big, is it like just about possible, or is it like has it got plenty of room? It's got plenty of room. Do you know what I mean? For me, that looks like really, really tight. So I suppose my question would be: is it just about meeting it, or is it hugely okay?
It's actually quite large when you look at it. It's 3.9 metres from corner to corner in terms of the access point that's drawn on the block plan.
That's the width of it.
And a standard car in terms of as a parking space is 2.4 within our local plan. There's the width of a car, so you've got 3.9 metres there.
12 feet.
The width of a car, aren't
But
we?
you're looking at a picture that's taken at a very different angle. I'm looking clearly at a block plan that's showing the access point. You've got the block plan up, yeah.
If I may, Chair, a car parking space is 2.4 metres. An average car is probably 2 metres wide because there's a bit of space either side of the car parking space.
Yeah.
So the access is probably double the width of a car at 3.9.
And that's taken at that point there. 3.9.
And to put that in context, a two-way access would be 5 metres. So 2 cars could pass on a road that's 5 metres wide. But this is only for 1 car to pass. You don't need 2.
That road is only as wide as a footpath, doesn't it?
The road itself is, but the
that's what I mean.
But well, no, that's the tracking exercise. That's a bit. It's a bit confusing because those lines show the wheels of the vehicle. There's land either side of the track.
Right.
Of the tracking exercise.
Okay.
So, it's Chair, whether members want to go with the restricted access on the basis of that. I would.
I'd still say for a move. I don't know how wide a fire engine is.
The fire engine doesn't need to get to that point though. It goes on the adopted highway.
The standard informative that they've requested, it's that access must be provided within 45 metres because obviously they reel the hose out and that goes to the property.
So what about the vans delivering stuff?
Well, again, the width, the access is wide enough. It's 3.9 metres, so it is wide enough to get a van in. They're not massively wider than a car, really.
You can nail this down because outside of the green spaces and the Silken Way, it sounds like we're all clutching at straws. Really?
Not all of us, Peter.
What are they? What are we? Well, I'm not refusing, but what are your reasons for refusal outside of that?
Well, the first two that members gave about the impact on the biodiversity, obviously there is a you need to accept what the ecologists say that the site is ecologically of poor value, but it's members' entitlement to form a judgment that the benefits don't outweigh the harm to the green network, and members are of the view, unlike officers, that it would have an impact on the separation between the Silken Way and the built environment. So that's a defendable reason for refusal because there's an element of subjectivity. I would, and so would our legal advisor, advise against refusing it on technical grounds of highways and drainage because highways haven't got an issue and drainage there will be a solution. If there isn't, it won't get approval. So if members are content to go with those first two reasons, Chair.
I think that's all we can do, Andrew.
Yeah. Do you need me to reiterate them or are we clear?
Just let them know exactly what we're going on because 4 of us didn't vote.
So it's harm to the green network, not outweighed by the benefits, and the harm is the biodiversity and the visual separation to the Silken Way, and that's it essentially.
Yeah.
Yep. We're content with those as officers.
Okay.
We're all happy?
Well, yeah.
Are you voting on it now, on terms of that? Yeah.
We voted to turn it down, and those are the reasons we're refusing it on. You agree those are the reasons to refuse on?
They're on page 55 anyway.
That's not what I said, Councillor Doug Moore. I'm asking the committee now whether they agree because we've voted the majority to refuse it, and now we have to agree as a committee as a whole that these are the reasons for refusing it.
We haven't mentioned drainage.
Well, I think you've had the answer on drainage, Councillor Doug Moore. That it's part of the conditions anyway that if it doesn't get done, it wouldn't get permission anyway. Okay, and you've made the reasons for doing it. I did say at the start you need sound planning reasons when you refuse things, and you have to fish around for them. You did last time. So anyway, this is vote to refuse. Do we all agree that the grounds we're going on to refuse?
Yeah.
Agree? We refused anyway, so okay. We all agree to refuse it on those grounds. Okay, thank you.
Propose and second.
It's agreed by it's unanimous for the committee. Will do that. You want to move for that, do you? Okay.
The legal advisor's giving you need to propose and second for that motion.
Yeah, I'll propose it.
I'll second it.
All those in favour?
For the reason.
The reason that we're refusing, yeah. Yeah.
If it's a formal vote, I'm going to abstain on it. I'm sorry, because I refused. I was in favour of it, and I don't really see that we could have.
Okay, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
There's one abstention then.
Thank you.
8 for, 1 abstention. So it's not unanimous.
Legal process though, no. Yeah?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the advice.